Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is John Miller with Lead2Goals, and we just are happy you were able to join us today for our executive leadership presentation. I can see by the registration that many of you have participated in one of these webinars before, and just wanted to thank you for being back again and having attended a previous one. For those of you joining us for the first time, I wanted to just take a quick minute to introduce our presenter, Scott DeLong. Scott has been an entrepreneur all of his life, starting his first business at the age of 16 and then creating two other successful companies. These were all bootstrap operations, as in starting from the ground up with no external funding or investors. He also holds a doctorate in leadership studies, which provides him with a unique combination of theoretical knowledge and practical application around the topics he speaks about. His passion lies in helping others and companies work with their executives to rid themselves of old, outdated management beliefs and to understand and appreciate and master a leader's mindset. His promise to his clients is that the process and techniques he coaches will bring tremendous benefits to the organization and beyond. It extends beyond the whole person, meaning not just the work persona, but also the relationships in their life. So with that said, Scott DeLong.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it. Thank you all for taking an hour of your time. We'll probably do it in 45 minutes, but then we'll have some questions and answers going. This is a once a month process that we do, and it's kind of a keynote approach to the courses that we offer through the company, and sometimes it's just one-on-one coaching. So the real purpose of this is, though, besides exposing our company to you all and what we do, but is to get people thinking and thinking about, how they're currently doing things, how they might want to be doing things, what's working for them and what's not working for them. And we'll provide you a lot of free resources as we go through as well. So you don't have to sign up for a course in order to become better at whatever the topic is. This one happens to be executive leadership. So what I encourage everybody to do is just continue to be a lifelong learner. Get the information wherever you can, put it in practice, try, see what works, see what doesn't work for you, and continue on your path for growth. So that's been one other procedural note. John will be managing the chat section. I just not really good at multitasking, so I won't be able to read that. But if anybody has questions as we go along, it's okay to stop and ask at that point. And I don't mind that at all. But then there's also going to be a question and answer portion at the end of this if we don't get to what you're thinking about. And you can always throw your questions in the chat, and John can just read those at the end as well, if you don't want to unmute and become a movie star yourself. So this one's on executive leadership. And the first thing I like to do is define the difference between leadership and management. So leadership is displaying the potential to influence, and that's the key word in my mind. Influence the behaviors of others. The ability to attract individuals and groups and inspire them to action to achieve a common goal. That's what a leader does. As opposed to management is the process of planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling a function or an organization. So Stephen M.R. Covey, which is the son of the famous Stephen Covey, and M.R. is fairly famous as well. He was a CEO of the Franklin Covey organization, and that when Franklin Book Planning and the Covey organization merged, Stephen became the CEO of that group. And he's got a new book out right now called Trust and Inspire. And I'm not 100% on board with everything that he says in the book, but if you want to read a good book on leadership and the leadership that needs to happen in the world from here forward, go ahead and pick up a copy of Trust and Inspire. It's pretty good. And I, actually in the first third of the book, I could see myself writing the same words that he did. So this is a good resource for you right there. Stephen Covey is he's a smart guy and not bad to listen to. Some of his stories wouldn't be the same ones I'd use, but they make a point, and he does it in a parable style. So some of the other differences between management and leadership. On the left-hand side of this list, you'll see management, and on the right-hand side, the complementary word that I like to use instead of that, and that is like, for instance, compliance. I'd rather rather than compliance, which is an old school way of getting the work done. Just do what I tell you to do. It'll work out, right? Getting commitment. I like effectiveness much better than efficiency. Business today has been, well, in the past probably 200 years, has been ruled on efficiency, trying to becoming more efficient. And I like effectiveness much better than that, because it involves efficiency, being efficient, but doing what works. And when I say what works, that expands not just the job that's being done, but what works for the people doing the job. The difference between equality and equity. Equality is everybody gets the same thing. Equity meaning people get what they need. Motivation is a word that's used in business quite often, and I choose the word inspire. The difference between motivation and inspiration is, and Daniel Pink talks about this in his book, Drive. You can motivate somebody with carrots and sticks. You can pay them to do something. You can threaten to fire them. That will motivate people to get the thing done on a short-term basis. But inspiration comes from deep within the people. It is something that they want to do because of the greater good, or for whatever their own intrinsic reasons. So I prefer inspiring rather than motivating. And trust me, all these things on the left, these management processes work. They all work, but the problem with them is they work short term. Instead of cooperating, I prefer to collaborate. Management will train somebody to do a job. A coach will have to get or the leadership will have to get some training in, but then coaches people on how to apply that training that they've been given. Manager will tell somebody what to do. A leader will ask them what might be a better way of doing this. Management concerns themselves with tasks, when leadership concerns itself with purpose. And probably the most important is that management is done with authority, having the authority to get something done, and leadership will do it through the fact of influence. And there's a difference between all of these words. And usually when we go through this is where a bunch of questions come out at the end is, can you explain that a little bit more? How does that work for you? And I'm happy to answer any of those. But again, we only have 40 minutes here or so we'll kind of rush through this. So I believe the role of the leader is eightfold. The first they are to do is inspire hope, create a unifying vision, build trust. And you'll hear me talk about trust a lot. That happens to be the spot that I believe that I have the most expertise in is the theory and then practice behind building trust. We'll get into that a little bit later. Communicate effectively, creating structure, providing support, executing on strategy. Those are also management responsibilities, those three. And the eighth, and maybe as important as any of those above, is to develop future leaders. Something that most CEOs that I've dealt with don't spend enough time doing. In fact, John and I were just talking about one of my clients earlier, where the CEO buys into the things that we talk about. The problem is that doesn't spend enough time doing the work to develop these future leaders. He believes that they will become leaders by doing the work and then getting some mentoring along the way. Kind of in my mind, a haphazard approach to that. And I think that if that becomes one of the top 8 things that a leader should be doing, you'll put more emphasis on that, because we do need to develop future leaders. The business is going to survive beyond us. So at this point, a brief commercial. My partner and I do a podcast. We put out episodes each week, and there's a QR code here that you can scan if you ever want to get to that. Again, it's just free content, and we're not sponsored by anybody. I mean, we'll talk about some places and things that we like, but this is really just a conversation. In fact, how this whole podcast came about is that one of my clients, who's a CEO of his organization, and I were sitting in the backyard one day, just talking about life. Business topics came up, and as generally when you have a couple business folks together, business topics come up. And at one point in the conversation, I just said, boy, people need to hear this stuff. There was some really good stuff in there. So we've decided to make a commitment to hosting the CEO podcast, which are conversations with entrepreneurs about opportunity. So if you're ever interested in getting some additional content from us, just jump on here. You can find it on all the audio sources, and we're also on YouTube as well. So if you want to take that down and listen to get some additional free content, this one has to do with accountability, and certainly a leader and a manager both need to hold people accountable, learn how to be held accountable, and hold people accountable as well. So the leadership styles that are out there, and this is not an exhaustive list. There will be descriptions of leadership styles that will not be covered here and that are still valuable leadership styles. So the command and control. Think back to probably a lot of people that you've worked for in the past that they have a command and control style. The US military used to use this. John Rockefeller and the Vanderbilt and all used to command and control. You had these great men, women too, but it's called the great man theory. These great people that would be the smartest person in the room. They would tell everybody how to do things, and people would just go and do that. And they got compliance, right? They worked as long as it worked. And there's some downsides to that, especially in the new economy with the new workers that we have available to us right now. There's the charismatic leader. This is the leader that does everything because they think politicians, right? That they look good and they speak well and they have a great message, and people will follow them because of that style. There's pluses and minuses to each of these styles as we go through. A servant leader, Robert Greenleaf, back 20 years, maybe more than 20 years now, wrote the book about servant leadership, whereas our job as a leader is to serve those that are following. And again, a lot of positive in that, and then some negative aspects of it as well. If anyone ever want to get into some of those, I'd love to talk about it. There's the authentic leader. The authentic leader is one of the newer leadership theories out there, and that is being true to yourself, being true to your word, being true to who you are and what you do, and leading people by example. I like it a lot. There's a couple, the downside of being the authentic leader is that sometimes we are so true to ourselves and just what we believe and what we want that we can ignore the thoughts of others and what might be better for the organization. And I'm not saying that you should completely give up on your values in order to serve everybody, to win the polls, if you will. But if we get too rigid in being too authentic, we might be missing some opportunities. My favorite happens to be the transformational leader. Has a lot of the same qualities as the authentic leader, but the added value here is that we are working towards the people. So we bring in some of the servant leadership with the authentic leadership places. And one of the biggest things that a transformational leadership theory suggests is that we are developing future leaders. That is the purpose of that. So we've got on our website, and you have access to it. John's going to put in the chat room or in the chat box a link to get this leadership trait document, and it kind of goes and it explains what some of the traits of that type of leadership is. And there's a spot probably to the right of that where mark down yours, right? So you can download this for free, and then mark down which of these characteristics you currently possess and how you're working that in your organization or with your family or anywhere else that you're a leader in society. And how we use this in our work is that I ask you to take a look at each of these traits and rate yourself 1 through 5 on all of them. And if I'm low on certain ones and high on others, and kind of get a snapshot of where you are. And generally, when we're working with clients, what I like to work on is if you find that trait important into your leadership style and you rate yourself lower on that, a 3, a 2, or a 1, those are the areas that we want to work on. We want to increase our lower qualities instead of getting better at what we're already good at. One of the analogies that I use I come from a sports background. So one of the analogies that I use is looking at the guy in the gym who's got this big chest and shoulders and pumps just tremendous amount of iron, always on the bench press, just pushing. And he's, lifting 400 pounds, but he wants to get to 420 pounds. So he'll continue to work on what's already a strength. The problem is you look down at the guy and he's got these skinny little legs, right? And to hold himself up. So it's not a complete player in that. This list, though, if you wanted to download it and play with it, it is not all inclusive. There are other traits that a leader might possess. So write some of those down for yourself as well. If you're good at something or not good at something, write some of those down. And then find a place to go work on the weaknesses that you find important. Areas that you find important and that I'm weaker on is what my recommendation would be, to spend more of your time doing that. So anyway, that's just a resource if somebody wants to take a look at that and give themselves some points and see where they're looking for. So we talked about leadership's role, and this picture is kind of a combination of the first two, the inspiring hope and creating a unifying vision. There's some controversy on, not really controversy on who should be creating that vision. There are those in the camp that say, well, it's the CEO or the founder or whatever vision should be able to create that vision, and then everyone should follow that. And then there's another camp that we should be building this together. And I've tried both, frankly. What I found is that it is more authentic for me to create an envisioned future that I'm looking for and hire people around that. I'm not saying only hiring people that agree with me, but people that think that vision is something that they'd like to get to and attain as well. As opposed to, we can get in a room and we can sit there all day figuring out what the unifying vision is for this organization and go through a collaborative approach to do that. And it works, but it's more difficult and it's slower. So I like the leader being in charge of creating that vision that will attract those that are also attracted to that vision. The next piece is to build trust. So and if you've ever been on one of our webinars, you'll see this diagram a lot. This is the basis of all the work that we do, which is what we call the circle of trust. And it's a 4-step process. It becomes part of a cycle, but it's a 4-step process that we have shown through studies that builds trust not only faster, it also builds it deeper. Typically, the way to build trust with folks is to do what you say you're going to do and do that on a consistent basis. That happens to be part of our process, but it's the 4th part. It's the fastest way to lose trust is to not do what you say you're going to do. But if you want to build trust faster, step 1 in this process is to start with respect. And it's not the type of respect that we grew up learning, is that respect is earned, it's not given. Nope. This is the respect that's given. You give somebody respect for their humanity, there's a value in everybody. And I believe that even, folks that are down and out, down on their luck, there is a value in every person. If we can just start there and believe in that value, we'll get to the spot where you can earn that respect from others, but start there. Listening to understand, which is a Stephen Covey concept in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is the father, not the son. The son is the one who gave you the book earlier. And listening to understand as opposed to listening to reply, which most of us do. We are listening for our turn to talk. We are listening to defend ourselves. And this is the listening to understand. There's a process on how to go about doing that. You take the authentic listening habits that you do, nodding and agreeing and paraphrasing and all those things that you've learned how in the listening, and you add a couple steps into that and asking questions of folks, asking them what they mean by that. Can you give me an example? Can you tell me a little bit more? Questions like that. It does a lot of things for you. In fact, why it's so high up on the list is because if people believe that we are truly hearing them, that Dr. Mark Goldstein talks about this, and I love this line. He says, people need to feel felt. And that's an understanding, getting an understanding. Why would a reasonable, rational human being think like that? That's my inquiry, to try to find out what's important about you and what you say and what you say. So it lessens people's hostility when you do that, even in a conflict situation. Right? And it gets them to recognize that they're being treated for their humanity, that you're really trying to understand where they're coming from. It doesn't mean I'm going to agree with you. We don't have to agree with people, but to try to understand them. The next piece comes from a group that I was part of, which is Entrepreneur Organization. EO is a group of business leaders that get together and they talk about things within their own small group. One of the rules that they have, they call it the Gestalt Language Protocol, is that we don't tell anybody else what to do. We don't give advice. We take the word should out of our vocabulary. We can share from our own experience. Oh, that's interesting. Something like that happened to me once. And here's what I did, and here's how that felt. Those conversations are powerful. Sharing from experience instead of taking the dignity away from somebody and telling them what they should do. Really powerful. And the fourth piece is deliver on the promise. So you want to build trust, really simple model, start here and repeat and do it a couple times. You get through this cycle 3 times, you will start earning respect from the people, which you will need in order to develop trust. You will end up being trusted and trusting. And the next part of that is developing relationships. So this is a really good model for anyone who wants to follow through on that. Communicating effectively. That's another part that this goes back to listening to understand, and empathic listening, right? Listening to your story, trying to understand what that looks like. Sharing from experience is part of the circle as well. And this is the third one that I really find useful. And this comes from a book called Humble Inquiry by Edgar Schein. So if anyone wants to read a really simple book on this, and he talks about using humility and inquiry in order to communicate more effectively. Asking people about their thoughts. Let me give you an example. I try to never come into a conversation with the answer, the solution. I may have a potential solution, and if I don't, I shouldn't be part of the conversation, right? But I'm going to give you a potential solution. What if we tried such and such, right? Whatever that might be. And then end that with, what do you think, right? I'm enlisting people to come up to the answer and collaborate with me on that. If I could just tell somebody who works for me or one of my children or any of those things, what I want them to do and when I want it to be done by. And I can get compliance with that most of the time. But to get the commitment, getting people to believe that they were part of the decision-making, because you're actively asking them to be part of the decision-making or the collaborative part on that. Really powerful way to communicate. Another request here. Now, I'm going to ask the group for this. So I'm in the middle of writing a book on transformational leadership right now. And there's some, each chapter is a different output. I am looking for volunteers right now to critique a chapter. If anybody is interested in taking a look at one of the chapters I've written, send me an email. I'll send them a chapter, and I really want critique. Not just what you liked or, oh, this is awesome, or any of those kind of comments. Not that I don't mind hearing those. So please, pat me on the back when you can. But what I'm really looking for is what didn't make sense. What do you disagree with? And how can you argue that point in this critique? So if anybody is interested in reading a chapter, it takes about a half an hour to read. And then writing me a detailed critique. I didn't like this, I like that, I didn't like that, that kind of stuff. Not the editing portion, we got editors for that, but really the concepts. So I'm requesting emails right now to scott@lead2goals.com. If you're interested in getting a chapter and would like to participate in being a critic of my work, I would love to have you in. Book should be coming out end of November if anyone's interested in that, but it won't come out until we get it right. So if you go through those first 8, there are 3 management responsibilities of the leaders: to create structure, provide support, and execute strategy. Not getting around that. There's going to be management responsibilities within that leadership, no matter what you do. Those are all important, although we're not going to spend any time on dealing with that today unless anybody has any specific questions. And then develop future leaders. And this is where I like to spend a lot of time. So part of that process is to educate. to give them tools and resources for them to go and learn. And we have a very specific process that we use when we're trying to educate. And it's more of it's kind of what I learned in grad school. And it's a collaborative approach. And rather than here, read the book and here's your test, it is a 3-step process we call the concept matrix. We have people read a chapter in a book, and then we get them to take the most important piece of that chapter, important to them. What was the thing that you got the most out of? What was the point of that chapter you got the most out of? Second section of that's a really short place is, what do you think the author meant by that? And then the third piece, the most powerful piece of that is, how can I apply that in my life today? And then we have discussion about it, and it's really cool. So I use that in an educate kind of process. Outside resources all the time. What are they learning about that? What challenges might they have? How can we discuss, debate, collaborate into making something that is going to be useful for the person that we're teaching, coaching, whatever we're working on. Also need to train. This is where, the old leader that I was, not the old leader, the current leader that I was talking about before believes you train people to do the job, let them do their job, and then we'll mentor them a little bit along the way and they'll become future leaders. I don't think it's enough, but it's been a style, and mentoring is really important. If you want to develop future leaders, you need to spend time with them. Simple as that. You need to spend time with them, showing them what you do, asking them how you can help. Really important process. If you want to become a leader, spend time developing future leaders. Send them to seminars, have them come on webinars like this, get them books, get them tapes, get them however that they're going to learn the best, and start when they're young or start when they're new. You don't have to be young to become a leader, but start as soon as you can if you want to be able to develop these leaders. It's really important. If you're going to be selling your company, for instance, the purchaser is going to want to know that you've got people, that you've got a backfill, you've got a bullpen, you've got people ready. And so that becomes part of the way to maximize the profitability of your organization as well. If you're not going to, you want to leave your legacy, develop future leaders. I can't spend enough time talking about this. So really brief, went through, we have courses on this for larger groups, but this is usually something that's done one-on-one executive coaching when we talk about becoming a better executive. So at this point, I'm hoping there's some questions out in the field that people, see someone's hand up, John.
Yeah, I do. I will unmute and feel free to ask your question.
I believe it's morning over there. Good morning, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good morning. Actually, I'm attending the meeting on behalf of one of my friend who is incapable of attending the meeting. So I'm learning whatever you have taught so far.
Thank you.
Actually, I have a question. I have been assigned a role of leadership right now.
Okay.
And the people I'm working with, they are not pretty much competent with those things. Besides that, whatever inputs I give in order to grow the organization, they do take credit of that and they report it to the senior manager. And in that situation, all my hard works and all my inputs go to vain. In that situation, how should I lead my team so that they should work for the growth of the organization, as well as they do not take the credit of the work I do?
So my first answer to that is to go back to the ask, not tell philosophy. I don't know a single person. I really don't. Whether it's one of my 2-year-old grandchildren, whether it's one of my children, one of my spouses, one of my employees, anybody that likes to be told what to do. And typically, or what they should be doing, right? So I've trained myself not to tell people what they should be doing. And the reason, and the way that I've done that is that anytime I use the word should, I apply a word arrogant to that. And I don't want to be arrogant. I've been accused of that in my life. I hated it. I just thought I was confident. Other people see me as arrogant, right? So I take the word should out of my vocabulary. So I go back to the ask, not tell philosophy. So rather than training people how to be a leader, we ask them questions about what they would provide a scenario and what they would do in that situation. And then I'd ask a follow-up question. Can you explain that? Can you tell me a little bit more? And you get people to walk. I try to get people to walk through the process of learning rather than saying, read this book and do it. Or here's the employee manual, follow it to a T. That's not going to develop leadership. So you come into a new role of trying to develop new leaders, and you tell them all the things that you know about being a great leader, people will resist. Almost always, when I start telling people what to do, I can see the body language like this. They cross their arms, they lean back. They're going to be resistant to those kind of changes. So what I try to do is more of a pull rather than a push. Rather than push leadership at people, you pull it out of them. Find out how they might be wanting to do things, getting them to describe that, giving potential solutions and asking them what they think about those. You'll get a lot less hostile reaction when you use an approach like that.
Hey, Scott, this is Rob Angel. Could I maybe add a comment if you don't mind?
Sure.
Your thunder. This is not my show. I'm just enjoying being in the audience. But to kind of elaborate on what that gentleman was saying, I think I'm younger in my career. I'm 38, just throwing a number out there to everyone.
Thank you.
For 5 years. So by no means am I the Olan expert, but I understand his thought process. And I think you said you were a new leader, sir, something to kind of think about in this role, in this capacity, is a change of mindset, because it's no longer about patting yourself on the back when you become the leader. It's about encouraging and moving your team to get those pats on the back. And it's a natural instinct of all of us, like when we have projects or we have people we're leading, like I think it's in our DNA to really it's like to make that perception change, because you want to take the credit or you want the pat on the back, but it's no longer so much about you. You're now the advocate for other people's careers. And I tell my teams that a lot I tell them, I'm your career advocate. Yeah, this is not your final destination where you are today. I'm here to help you get to wherever you need to go next, as well as the job at hand. And I think that's part of the challenge that you're going to be faced with is, you're leading a team now, and you have to trust in the fact that your senior leaders will see the output of these people that you're leading. And there's ways to craft that messaging too, and give those people a pat on the back, because that's what your leadership wants to see. They wanted you to be their encouragement at the end of the day. Hey, so and so was leading this project. I gave them some guidance, and look, they got these results. There's ways to approach it, I feel. But
thanks, Rob. I appreciate that. So there's another tool that you could think about using, right? And I'm saying get the information from the people that you're trying to teach and train, and what do they think that they need. But I like using 360-degree evaluations as well. Finding out what management is looking for, right? The people that have hired you to train these future leaders, get their perception, and then get the perception of the person that is being in this sort of training or coaching that you're doing, and look for the gaps. If I think I'm a really good communicator and everyone else says I'm not a very good communicator, there's a gap there, and we start working and training on the gaps. Using a 360-degree evaluation is a great way for people to see the gaps. We believe what we believe, right? I think I'm a really good communicator. Our blind spot is that others don't. So getting a 360 evaluation done well is a good starting point when you're working on new leaders as well. I hope that helps.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your inputs. It will be very helpful. I believe I could go forward with this approach, and would be looking forward to these kind of sessions to inculcate the leadership qualities in future leaders on your behalf. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Got a couple other hands up.
I believe Winifred was first.
Yeah, it's Winnie. Thank you so much, John. I was just going to add, because I forget the gentleman's name who posed the question or the comment. I just want to pause and add the human aspect to it, right? I think he asked a legitimate question, and I resonate with it, because every time I hear that someone is being accredited for something that they were not should not be fully credited for, it usually is an indication to me that there's a broken link somewhere, right? Either a broken link with the team or the talent, and or a broken link with the manager and his superiors. And I think he kind of hinted at it earlier that he may have some skill sets that that maybe his team just have not developed as of yet. But we should, I don't know if this is really about to be accredited or to not be accredited, but it's dishonest, right? If you know you did not originate the idea, it's dishonest to not share that openly. And I think it's just an opportunity for the team to maybe do some introspective, or for the leader to do some introspect work and say, what am I missing here in the team that the influence is not landing as expected? But I do want to applaud him for sharing that vulnerability and being transparent with his experience.
Thank you, Winnie.
We have a few more hands up.
Hey Scott, this is Shiv.
Hi, Shiv.
So, I was hearing about your, about the thought process which you were sharing, and I mean, I heard the question as well from one of the guy. So my question is, I mean, does it really matter? I mean, when we get into a leadership role, right? So I just wanted to know your thoughts. Like, does it really matter? Like, should we, as a leader, right? So should we really matter about the credits and like I have done this, or because I mean, from my perspective, it's more of about the outcome we are getting, because obviously it's not one person's effort, it's whole team, it's a group effort. So does it really matter from your perspective to get credit of doing things as a leader?
Well, for the leader to get credit, absolutely not. For the team to get credit, or the individuals that are brought that certain idea, absolutely. If it's the outcome that you are looking for, or a better outcome, you want more of those, give credit to the people who came up with the ideas, or credit to the people who have implemented those things. I don't need to get the credit. I've already been given that. They already gave me that job, right? I don't need any more of that for my own ego, but I'm trying to develop future leaders. Encourage the behavior that you want more of, you will get more of it.
Absolutely, I agree. So currently I'm in a role of leadership, like I'm running a successful bootstrap startup based out in India. So if I talk from my perspective, my team, so I mean, this is how I think. Please feel free to correct me, and that's what I'm looking for, to looking for inputs. So what happens is, in my role, right, being a startup, being a small company, so when we deal with the clients, right, obviously people make mistakes. We all are human beings, right? We all are social animals. We make mistakes, but if anything happens, obviously my team is doing a great job, and in case something happens, which is not correct, maybe some issues happens or like that, and so I feel I should absorb all the heat. And whenever we get appreciations, so instead of taking that, that's how I do. I mean, we should spread all the good things to the team so that they feel motivated, and that's what helps us to keep them motivated every day to come here. Well,
I agree, and I think there's more to that. We are going to do things that don't always work. Call them mistakes, call them failures, call them whatever you want. I don't like using those words. What I think more important for us to do as leaders is to figure out what we learned from that behavior and then share that with everybody, right? So mistakes happen, and here are the consequences of those mistakes. Great. It's not about blame. Who did that? Who did the wrong thing? And unless you got a subversive person in the group. But what is it that we learned when we went that direction and did that thing? It's not a failure if you learn from it. It's an experience.
Yes, I agree.
Great.
That's what I mean. That's how I think. So what do you think? I mean, is it the right thing to absorb? Because from my perspective, like I'm here at a leadership position to protect my team. It's not a team, but moreover, I treat all my team members as a family members. Because it's my job, because I got a leadership position. So it's my job to protect them and to give them enough confidence, to come up every day with good motivation, so that, I mean, that's how I feel.
Well,
Take up the credit of bad things and give away the credit of good things.
I think you're right. In fact, Harry Truman, one of the presidents of the United States, believes you're right as well. He had a sign on his desk that said, "The buck stops here." What that means is all problems are the leader's fault.
Yeah.
They belong to you. Now, do you need to take corrective action downstream and work with the people who have caused those things? Certainly. But as important as teaching the team what we learned, teaching yourself what you learned. Meaning, did I spell check this? Right? If I take my PowerPoint, for instance, if I put a PowerPoint, which I didn't develop, right? I had someone do that for me, and there were typos in there, those are my fault. They're not the person who put the typos in there, right? As the leader, as the presenter, as the figurehead, the problems are my responsibility. And taking the heat for that's one thing. And then the corrective action down below, the people that are working with you, working with them to make sure that those things don't happen. I mean, that's what leadership's all about. Okay, we got another hand up.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, thank you, Shiv. Another Winifred or a Winnie?
Yeah, I prefer to be called Winifred. Okay, so
Okay.
yes, and you talked about youth, raising young leaders. So I'm very interested in developing future leaders. I'm very interested in knowing how would you raise well-balanced children? Because I believe parenting is all about leadership. A lot of self-leadership, a lot of leading others. So if you were to raise well-balanced children, Gen Zs, this digital economy where the digital devices are and information is just right there, how would you raise well-balanced children?
I would raise them better now than I did when I had young children. I tell you that. The things that I've learned in my life, that being 62, that I didn't know when I was 27. And so raising well-balanced children, that's a big topic. What I will say is this: the same leadership qualities we're going to talk about that works for your organization will work in your family too. It's all the same thing. And the reason is because whether it's your work or whether you're at home, you're dealing with people. These are just people. Now, they might have different responsibilities and the different attitudes and different whatever, but learning how to deal with people on their terms and what is going to be best for them. That's where we get to the equality versus equity. Go back a few slides. Equality versus equity. Equality is giving everybody the same thing. I would not raise all my children exactly the same way because of the same rules. I would raise them based on what they need at the time. Same thing I do with employees. Same thing I do with my clients. What is it that you need? Not what is my prescribed method of doing one thing, because it might not work for them. But providing options, experiment, and not telling them that they're failing, right? Finding out when a failure happens, when something bad happens, finding out what they might have learned from that, I think is the best way. And go back to the ask, not tell, the same thing. Rather than tell them, you should not have done that, right? Ask them, so give me your thought process. Why did you go through that? Okay, what happened? What could you do better next time? When you're raising children, and this isn't a parenting class at all, I used to think about raising children. The fact is, we're not raising children. They already know how to be children. We're raising adults. We want to raise adults. In the workplace, the same thing. They already know how to be a supervisor or a manager, but we want them to become our leaders. So I would teach concepts. I would ask them how they apply to them and make it come from allow it to come from their perspective. And then guidance along the way as well. Just because somebody says something doesn't mean they're going to be right or that's the best method, but asking more questions and getting them to think and resonate on that. I do the same thing with children now that I do with employees now. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Daniel.
Hi, Scott. Can you hear me?
I can.
Great. Is it all right if I mention a book on 360-degree reviews?
Absolutely. We like to share resources here.
Okay. Well, a mentor of mine about 10 years ago referenced John Maxwell and his book on 360-degree reviews, which is, I find it excellent. But the other thing that I saw through your slides was emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And how it fits into some of the things that you do as a leader. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
We actually teach a course on emotional intelligence. It's one of the things that I find really important. And here's the problem with a lot of this stuff, like communications. We all think we're good communicators. We could be better. We all think we're really good at emotional intelligence, that we can read others or we understand ourselves. I can tell you right out, we're not. We're not that good at it. And the more time that you can put into your own growth on whether it's communication, emotional intelligence, leadership theory, and practice, even strategic planning, the more time that you can put into that, the better you're going to be at it. Most of the work that we do is self-reflective work. I come into places and people tell me what's wrong with everybody else, right? Well, if they would just start doing this, if they would just start doing that, and there's two things that I like to do. The first one is I say, you know, when everyone else looks wrong, it might not be them. That makes people sit back and think a little bit. But the other thing that I like to do is get people to ask this one question, no matter what's happening. Now, and go back to that other statement. Even if somebody is completely wrong, right? There's still something you can do different about it on the receiving end, right? There's always something that you can do to learn and grow. So no matter what, ask yourself this: what's my part in this? Because that's all you can control anyway. Control really is an illusion, right? We can get compliance, but we're not going to get control for long anyway. And what's my part in this? What could I be doing different to get a better outcome? Something that I'm looking for that's going to be better than that. So another question, and I'm sorry, but I can't. Yeah.
Sorry, we had one that got typed in, and I let the next question know ahead of time in chat. This one got typed in before the next hand was raised. So I just don't want it to get missed. So it's, do you have symptoms that reveal when executive leaders are acting or leading more tactically versus strategically?
Yeah. The first symptom is there's when they say you a lot. You do this, you did that, they did that, right? I can tell right away that they're being less self-reflective, and that they need more leadership training. So that's the first thing that I look for, is how they're talking about the problems that are existing. Whether it's a we, whether it's an I, or is it a you? So that's the first thing that I look at. Tactically versus strategically. Tactics are doing things, right? Strategic is kind of a bigger concept about that. And if I see a leader, you've all heard the old saying that if I want something done right, I need to do it myself. When I see that, leaders doing more of the work, the tactical pieces, the steps, the action steps to get something done, then I know that they're not doing their job. If they're truly a leader, then they should be stepping above that, helping other people to get those things done, providing them the tools to get those things done rather than just doing it for them. The old parable from the Bible about give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, you teach the man to fish, you feed him forever. Same thing happens in leadership, right? If I keep doing your work, and people will bring me their work to do, right? And if I just do it for them because it's faster for me than for me to help them get it done or provide them the tools to get it done, then I'm leading tactically instead of strategically. So one of the first tricks, it's not really a trick, concepts that I would use. Someone came to me and say, hey, I'm struggling with this thing that you gave me. What should I do? Well, the tactical leader will just do it for them. Well, just simply do this and tell them exactly what to do, the right thing to do. The strategic leader will say, What do you think you should be doing? What parts are you getting stuck on? Asking and not telling. So doers are tactical, right? Questioners are helping people learn and grow. And I'm sorry, Phangi. I don't know how to pronounce that, but you've got your hand up.
Feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
All right, let's move on.
Hello.
Hello,
Hello, Scott.
Yes.
Yes, my name is pronounced Phangi. So I wanted to ask a question with regard to, asking and not telling.
Yeah.
So I've just moved recently to a leadership position and I report to the CEO. However, this strategy of asking without telling, it's sort of, it goes two ways. I'm finding it a lot difficult to cope with, because sometimes you find that the leader as well, he's not well versed in the technical, part of what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis in my leadership position. So
Sure.
sometimes it gets difficult for him to even ask. So my question is, how do we manage up as leaders?
Yeah, well, that's an important part of that, especially if you're working for an old school command and control manager. And there are those out there. So I think part of the managing up is to help educate them as well. And how do you do that? You need to know the personality of the person that you're dealing with. But I've given several clients a book to read. There's lots of great books out there, and just as a gift, right? So it's kind of subtle, not saying you need to read this or you should be such and such. That doesn't work. If I ever told someone they needed to read a book, they won't do it. But if they got a book as a gift that sparked their interest, they might read it. Hey, let's talk about that. What did you like? What didn't you like? So you can start helping to educate them. The other thing that I would do if I had an old school leader like that is I would make sure they knew what my process was on the people that I'm trying to help. So, and I would tell them, and my process takes longer than just telling people what to do. It does, right? So training somebody, coaching somebody takes longer than just getting the work done. But if you make sure that they understand if your boss is the old school leader and hey, this is going to take a little longer because what I'm trying to do is develop this person into a future leader rather than just getting that work done. Now, the work's going to get done too, but I'm going to spend time developing them. Are you okay with that? All right, and you'll get whatever answer you get. I mean, you work for the person, you got to do what they want to do. But I think we need to also, part of it incumbent upon you to manage up and to help train them to understand what your role is and what you believe it should be, and how that person above you, whether it's a man or woman, doesn't matter, would react to that. I mean, they're the ones signing your paycheck, kind of have to do what they want, but that doesn't mean you can't influence them as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Another hand up. Again, I'm not really good at pronunciation. Nibet?
Hello, Scott. Good evening.
Hello.
Your teachings so far have been very much helpful. I believe so. And I have personally experienced it. It was really quite useful. I have a question. I believe for a sustainable business, there are two aspects. The first is the sales part and the second is the service.
Okay.
And I, on the other hand, I'm leading on the both front. I mean, I have people who work along with me who also belong from the sales department. And there is certain people who are working along with me. They also belong from the service department. But the thing is that for the past couple of months, I have experienced, because I'm a new joinee over there, I have experienced there is a certain kind of a gap over the communication between those two departments of that organization I've been working for. So how to bridge that gap? Because I believe you're such experience, you might have heard this question earlier as well, that these two departments, first the sales part and the services part, these two have certain amount of gap in communication. So how to bridge that gap when I'm taking care of that business?
Okay.
Thank you.
So that goes back to the inspire shared vision. Is yes, there are different tactics that the salesperson would do than the service person or the operations person or the finance person would do. And they're actually naturally enemies, right? Take a look at the finance people and the salesperson. They're natural enemies. Finance people or salespeople think that the finance people are anti-sales, and the finance people think the salespeople are just giving the house away, right? So you're going to have natural enemies within an organization as well. But what I found the best way to do is to get them both in the same room and talking about what we have in common and the common good of the organization, and for them to understand from the other person's point of view what the unintended consequences are of the actions that are being taken. It's breaking down silos within an organization. I think there's nothing more important that a company can do is to have cross-functional work groups working together. Having the thoughts and the ideas from a broad variety of people with different needs, wants and needs that they have for the organization is going to produce far better outcomes, albeit a little bit slower, far better outcomes, because what it will do is it'll help mitigate unintended consequences. If the sales group is sitting with the service people and they start talking about all the things that they want to do, and the service people know that there are going to be problems with that, the sales people don't see those problems. Having the service people in the room to say, okay, I understand where you're coming from. However, here's what will happen with that. Having that dialogue between the two to create synergy between the departments will help build a better solution than either group could have come up with on their own. And better for who? Better for the company. Not just better for the sales department, not just better for the service department, but if we have that shared vision and here's where we're trying to get to, we're all working for the same place, and making sure that they are on that same page and discuss what their differences look like, you're going to have far better solutions.
I do have one more question, if you don't mind.
Sure. We're about to run out of time, so this will be the last one.
It will be a very brief question. I won't extend it.
Okay.
The question is that, as your suggestions to this, to the catering the problem of the sales department and the service department, that we need to get them in the same room and talk about the challenges we are facing and work together on that. But still, I believe, how long can I project that these problems can be resolved within an organization if those two people are coming into the same room, they are getting onto the same page, we are discussing problems, but still they have this kind of inferiority among themselves, that if the sales department people are doing well, they might outplay the people who are in the service sector. And if the service sector persons are doing well, the salesperson might be outplayed and they might not get that kind of attention or that kind of recognition from the organization.
Yeah, so that's a whole, so we teach a class on this as well, or what we call conflict and power and influence, right? And one of the ways to get the best out of all people is try to equalize the power within the room. Give you an example. When we do a strategic planning sessions, a CEO will hire me, even though he or she has all the same talents and skills that I have, to run their strategic planning meeting for them, to minimize their power within that room so that they can become a participant. So that is an enlightened CEO that will be able to temporarily minimize their power to get more information from the other. So back specifically to your question, you were talking about, when people talk about problems in a group, great. I want to hear your problems, but I also want you to come up with a potential solution. If you cannot come up with a potential solution, all you're doing is complaining. And a potential solution is not, we should be doing this. It's, what if we were to do such and such, and then come back with the final question, what do you think? And getting that dialogue between the two groups, generally, if you can equalize that power in some way, you will generally get a better solution, a synergistic solution to whatever the problem is going to be. Okay, so we're going to be out of time.
Thank you, Scott.
We're going to be out of time here. So please shoot us questions. I'll answer one-on-one, anything that, get on the phone if you'd like and talk about that. Couple other things that I wanted to make sure that we got to is that we do provide free 15 minutes with on an initial call. If somebody wants to call on and say, I got this problem, what do you think we ought to do? This Calendarly leak, just get on there, and our business development person will get back to you and get all that. The other thing is next month, let's go to this portion. Business and professional communications is going to be the topic for next month on June 21st. Feel free to sign up for that as well. If you like the content, let us know. Problems with the content, let us know. We want to get better at this as well. So I like to get the critique. Go back to the first request. If you want to read a chapter in my book, not published yet, to critique it, positives, negatives, all of that, please send me an email. I will send you a chapter and would love to hear what you have to say. So thank you all for coming. I really appreciated all the questions at the end. And if you have additional questions, give us a call or email directly and we'll answer all those. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.